Let's hit it.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
All right, here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. If you enjoyed the music and our opening, it's a new song called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download it on any of your favorite music platforms. So please check that out. Again, Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band. And for those of you that are new to our show, we're about sound news, not just sound bites. We want to get the true story and have heartfelt conversations. And our goal is to raise everyone's voice, from those living with dementia to the families and researchers, authors, musicians, businesses, you name it. We want to hear what you're doing and how it can help others out there. Maybe avoid some of the struggles that you personally went through. Now, today's show, we're going to be discussing finances and how do you get all that stuff organized, your personal information. But before I go to our guest, I always want to give a couple of quick shout outs. First is to the Memory Cafe directory. They are now tracking virtual memory cafes to make it a little bit easier for people to connect, since we're all kind of housebound these days. So you can go to memorycafedirectory.com. The other is Live to Be Healthy. They're a fitness and nutrition company that used to meet on site, but is now doing some virtual online things as well. So you can check them out at Live and the number 2, the letter B, and then Healthy. Also, during this time, the coronavirus, we're doing a weekly special. Typically, we'll launch on Sundays, and we're interviewing a variety of people during that show. And if that's something you're interested in, telling your story, how you're adapting, love to hear from you. And don't forget our prior shows. Everything is archived. And so you can't lose out if you missed a scheduled show. Everything is there, and we go back about 10 years with that. Last, I want to thank each and every one of you as listeners. You see, your likes, your clicks, and shares have really expanded our brand footprint here on Alzheimer Speaks. So I hope you will continue to spread the word of our work. And, don't just like our radio show or our YouTube page or our blog, Facebook, like them all. Let everybody know that you feel this content is valuable and that you want to be alerted when information comes out. So, with no further ado, let me introduce you to Kay. I'm really excited to have Kay Bransford with us. She has cared for 2 parents, not just 1, 2, with dementia for over 5 years, and she turned that experience into an Amazon best-selling book. She has also founded a business called Memory Bank, and bank is with a C, which helps families deal with all of their personal organization we need to have in order and have in place, and yet are really scared to deal with because we think if we address it, it's going to be the end. And it really is just about smart living. And so her workbook really helps you organize your life. And she's just helped so many. She also won the Older Adult Focused Innovation Award from AARP Foundation. Congratulations on that. That's a big one. And Kay has also appeared on the Dr. Oz show. She's been on the Huffington Post and BBC and lots of different television and radio programs, just to help connect families and educate them on how to get your personal information organized and live well. So welcome, Kay. How are you today?
I am good. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to have you here with me today. Now, I had mentioned in the intro that you had two parents that had dementia. Do you mind just sharing a little bit more about that journey with us, just so people have a little more insight as to your background?
Sure. It was interesting because I had a mom who was concerned about my dad. She thought I was getting a little bit more forgetful. A dad who was concerned about my mom, who we noticed personality changes, and I noticed her remembering things differently. So after as many of us have lived, you go through a series of things. It's not a quick diagnosis. My mom ended up having vascular dementia. She had had a stroke, which triggered a lot of more noticeable issues cognitively. And when we found out about that was her second stroke. So the first stroke had the first memory issues where we were starting to notice behavior changes. And then as she was progressing in her own cognitive challenges, my dad was then diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So two different types of dementia. So, but very similar. Some things were the same and some things were very different with the changes in their behaviors and their things.
Wow. How far apart were their diagnoses? Do you remember?
They were actually diagnosed on the same day from the same doctor.
Oh my gosh.
So I couldn't really one wouldn't go without the other. They were married. They were a great partnership. So we actually did neuropsychological testing with them together. People had suspected, we think there's something, but those mini mental cognitive programs, they did really well. My dad had a 28 out of 30, but then was diagnosed with a moderate stage of dementia. So it's interesting how good and poor some of the testing can be. But it was actually the same day we found out both of them had different kinds of dementia, and were both at a moderate stage by the time they were finally diagnosed.
Wow. I think, wow, what a double whammy, but then to have one and then wait a few years or something, no matter what it is, it would still hit you hard, I would imagine.
Well, it did, but it was almost, it's some of the part of where you have to find some of the humor in it, because my dad knew something was wrong with my mom, and my mom knew something was wrong with my dad, but neither of them could recognize it in themselves. So it was really interesting to watch. It was sad, but sometimes it was horrifically funny.
Okay. Well, in humor, I know sustained me and my mom, on our journey of 30 years, with that. Laughter is a savior in a lot of ways, with life to keep us moving. Why don't you tell us how did you come about your memory bank products? Because you've got more than one, and just at looking at your site and reading a little bit more, I just think they're fantastic. But why don't you share with us?
Yeah. So as my parent, they were a military family. So I grew up with mom and dad telling me, here's our will, here's all the information you need, here's a check should something happen. So they were ultimately prepared and did everything the estate lawyer, the financial planner, and the insurance provider said you needed to do. But what happened as I was started to help them is I really didn't know a lot of the details I needed. I didn't know account information. I didn't really know personal medical history. So I started to pull together this binder of information so that if I walked into a doctor's appointment, if I showed up at their house and the water was turned off, which I did once or twice, I could immediately respond and help address whatever issue needed to be taken care of. So it really started out of personal necessity and just trying to help them and kind of be in the background because they thought everything was okay and felt they were doing and managing well. So that binder, I just started collecting all the information and writing it down. And I knew I'm one of 4 kids. So when my siblings came into town to give me a break, I could hand over the book and say, all right, you're on it and you have everything you need to go. So it really was part of my personal process to just feel like I had some control and I could be a good advocate for both of them.
Oh, I get that. I did that with my folks too. Wasn't smart enough to turn it into a business though, but I remember, it was just so important, and you don't know what you don't know, and things would just kind of pop up and you're like, oh my God, how did I not know about this? Why didn't you? Oh, we didn't think that was important. Or even when you mentioned, because my folks were really pretty open as well. And when you mentioned, and here's a check in case you need something, my folks did the same thing. It's just that era of, just, you never know. And I know I'm starting to do that myself. I'm 60 now, and my daughter's in her 30s, and I just thought I gotta pull this stuff together. I have it all, but you'll never find it, or not easily
Right.
in terms of it being scattered, and even the passwords for all the stuff that you have nowadays, and things and stuff. How long did it take you to decide to create your first product? Was it while you're caring for your folks, or was it later in the journey?
So, I was still working in corporate America, had a full-time job, and I would go into work and tell people, like, you won't believe what happened. Here's what I'm doing. I had the book with me, so I could always jump and go or answer a question on the phone. And I started to learn how many people around me had similar issues, and I was raising 2 kids. So it was a really overwhelming time. So I kind of went through a period where I realized that it was hard to stay in your job and be I felt like I was a bad employee. I was a bad parent. I was a bad caregiving daughter. I couldn't do anything well. And so as I was going through that, like, personal change, I realized that this really was a need for the community. And in talking to people around me, they just said, I'd really like a copy of your book. So it just spawned the idea that, now's the time. You need to do something about it. This is too hard. It shouldn't be this difficult for us to be good advocates for our loved ones.
Yeah.
So that was probably 3 months. I kind of hemmed and hawed over it for a while.
Yeah, well, and it's so nice to know that what you did is helpful for somebody else too. To me, in my advocacy with my work, I just find that, well, it wasn't all for nothing.
Right.
You kind of come out with, okay, this is helpful. There was something to learn, and I can share. I'm always learning and always adjusting, and have just always kind of had that mindset. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the different types of products that you have developed?
Yep. So, I started out and it was a binder system because I just realized that's the easiest way. That's what I did for myself, is I had sections: household, finances, medical, their online information. And so I really took the tool, and through my 3-month period in doing market research, I talked to a lot of financial advisors and asked them what were important sections. So I started with a binder system because that seemed easy to do. People could add papers, take away, custom tailor it to themselves. So as I did this thinking it was for caregivers, what happened my first year of business is most of my people buying the products were families. So it was husbands and wives buying it to have joint conversations. It wasn't just caregivers. And so from that, they're like, you know what, I really don't want a paper system. Can I have it digital? So I took the paper system and I turned it into a digital product. So it's in an editable PDF that people can keep on a flash drive. And from there, and part of my work with the ERP Foundation was they wanted to have a tool that could be used by families all across the country, low income specifically. And so the workbook tool was basically taking the binder system and putting it in a printed format that could be reproduced inexpensively and easily purchased. And it's, less than $20. Everyone can get a tool that they can use and have for their families.
Well, that's amazing. I think that digital, is just so important because people realize, I think, how often stuff changes these days too, or you move the money over here and you moved it over there, or you're dealing with this person, or, all of those different components that change over time. I know with my folks, oh my gosh, they had stuff all over the place. I'm like, we got to consolidate this. I don't know how you're keeping any of this straight, and they were fine with that. And, we found somebody that they were comfortable with, and they didn't even realize that they had kind of all these little pots all over the place. And then, when you're talking about bill paying and things like that as well, or just the doctor's names too, I found was just, critical. And the older they became and there were more needs and more specialists, and it's like, man, if I don't have this written down, I don't have a chance of being helpful to them. And so it's really very, very interesting on all of that. How did this all impact your journey as a caregiver yourself?
Mm-hmm. So it was really interesting because I think one of the things that I learned poignantly the first year was we kind of want to go in and just take care of it. Like I was a fixer. So I wanted to show up, I wanted to fix things. But they don't want you to do that. And so one of the things that helped me learn was that if I included them in creating this information, when I included them on doing bill pay or asking them questions about, renewing the insurance, they were happy to participate. It was when I wanted to come in and take things away and not involve them, that there was a problem, because they're like, I'm fine, I can do this by myself. But if it was a joint thing and I included them, it really made a big difference on how we actually, work together. And it's empowerment to them. So it made me realize how much everybody needs purpose and meaning. And you can't just take away someone's checkbook because you're worried for their safety. They want to have a checkbook. My mom needed to have a checkbook. So we made a system so she could have a checkbook that didn't have a lot of money in it. So when she left her purse somewhere, we weren't so worried. So there's crafty ways for you to manage around a lot of the issues that you're going to face to let someone have purpose and meaning. And I really learned that in spades the very first few years helping my parents, as well as managing the business and working with other families.
I can totally agree with that, the importance of having them involved. One of the situations, and I don't know if you ran into this, but there got to be a point, my dad had brain cancer, my mom had dementia, and we were working with a financial planner, and it was always their choice. I would drive them to the meetings and stuff, but it was adamant that, this is their money and their funds. And it got to a point towards the end with my dad's disease that he didn't really want to make a great decision. And my brothers and I kind of went back and forth, and I just said, this will kill him if we stop him and tell him, and block this. And yeah, he's going to lose some money. But for me, it was more important that he had his dignity because it was his money. And I know not everybody looks at it like that. And even though I had power of attorney, and I could have gone back and readjusted things, I just didn't. And my brothers weren't real happy with me about that. But I just thought it was just so important to my dad. It was just so very important that he was able to choose. And so I don't know. Those are things though that families have to struggle with. How are you gonna deal with that? And I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong way in terms of doing that. And maybe you think there is, or have some advice with that. Personalities are interesting though.
Right. Well, I mean, it's funny because we had, with 4 siblings, it made it easy to have. It was easy for us to vote. It was very clear what, we would be worried about having a 2-2 tie. We put ground rules into place, so we would have family votes if it impacted us financially. Here's how we would manage the vote. So I think it's good to have ground rules if you are navigating with siblings. And I actually have 3 rules to go by that I've posted up on my blog. And it worked really well for us. So I don't think anything's right for everyone. I think things that are right for you and your family, and you have to find that balance. Because a lot of times people do view it as like, this is our future inheritance. And it's like, it's not your future inheritance, it's your parents' money. It's the individual's money until they're not alive anymore. So I find that to be the most difficult, is a lot of times people do view it as protecting their money, not using someone's money to help them live the life that they want. And I'm glad you did that. It sounds like you did the right thing for your dad.
Yeah. And, like I said, he lost some money, but it was his money to lose,
right.
And it just, to me, it wouldn't have been worth any dollar amount to have him lose his dignity.
Right.
And in his independence, all of those all of those pieces. I mean, I remember even when we had to take the car away and having those discussions, were not easy. And my dad still really wanted to drive, but it wasn't safe. So we would, he would still have his clicker. But he wouldn't take the car. There wasn't a key on it, but he could click it. And this was before the electronic buttons, where we probably could have gotten into some trouble there. But he would wait until I came over and I would drive, and he would navigate, where we're going and how he wanted to get there, and I would follow that. But just about every time we'd go to leave, I'd have to get out of the car, stop the car, and shut the trunk, because he was clicking the buttons, and he'd pop the trunk open. But it made him feel good, and so it was okay. It was okay.
Right. Yeah, and you probably have dealt with this too. Is I think the biggest thing that I can hold my hat on is I know I did what was best for them at the time with the information I had. So knowing what their wishes were, knowing what they wanted, it might not, looking back, I could have made a better decision looking back in my rearview mirror. But as you're in that moment, if you know that you're doing the best thing for them and in their best interests, to me, it alleviates so much guilt that you feel, just because you can always second guess every decision you've made. And I think that is the best thing I did, was to know I always made the right choice based on what I believed they believed, if that makes sense. So I think that's a huge thing to help people as they're on this journey, is that it will help you immensely to know you're doing what they wanted.
Yeah. Well, and I know for some families, and mine included, we were trying to get mom and dad to do their wills and stuff. And my dad's, we don't have that much, just kind of blue collar. And I'm like, you have more than you think you have. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, no, I didn't want to do that. Because I think in his mind, it was end of life. I do the will, I'm dying. And that was the connection. And so I said, how about if Tom and I do it at the same time? And so we went in and we got educated with the same attorney, who did both of our wills and healthcare directives and all of that. And that just made it so much easier for them, because then it wasn't, they didn't view it as an end of life thing. And I think sometimes that piece is missed. Right. We should all be doing this when we're 18 years old, getting all our paperwork in order, and we don't. And I've dealt with many parents who can't talk to doctors, and their kids in the hospital unconscious, but they're paying the hospital bill. Right. But because there's no power of attorney, they don't know what's going on. And so I think we really have to focus people. This is about smart living. This is about easing the stress in the long run, alleviating, like you said, some of the guilt and the second guessing that we feel because we haven't had these conversations. And, it's inevitable, that these things are going to have to be addressed for most of us out there. And it's important conversations, I think, for families to have. Since you launched the Memory Bank, what sticks out in your head the most in terms of what you've learned maybe from others who have used your system?
Yeah. I think that, again, it goes back to the doing in tandem. Like, so many people don't think about having these conversations with their partners, their spouses, their adult children. And I've been so happy and fortunate because I've been able to see people use the tools to have those conversations. It's a workbook. So you're basically answering easy questions, and it's stuff that, you think you might have told someone. So that I ask people, it's like, how many times have you had a conversation with your partner or spouse where they have no idea what you're talking about? And you're like, I know I told you that. So it's important to do that. So I've had so many people kind of come back and just say, thank you. Like, it was hard to get started. Like, a lot of times people are like, this is a big deal. It really isn't, because you can sit down and do it in 15-minute increments, and it's really easy to get done. And you'll have conversations about things that seemed really innocuous and you never wanted to discuss them, but there'll be a point in your life where it'll make a big difference. Yeah.
Well, and when we think about it, when the time comes, and none of us know when that is, I think most of us want our loved ones to have a smoother process. We don't want to dump more stress on them. And this is one way to really alleviate that and smooth the process. Because even with my folks, we did all this pre-planning. There was still work that had to be done, and so it can be little things like writing the obituary. You have it paid for and you've got it all lined up with your prepaid burial stuff, but it still needs to be done. And or trying to dig out all those accounts, just even figuring out how many death certificates do you need.
Right.
I mean, it could be a really small, little, teeny weeny thing, or maybe it's not a death. Maybe someone's just incapacitated for a while, and making sure that, the show keeps moving along and bills are being paid, and, staying on top of those. It's important stuff. It's really important stuff.
And I think it's even too that it's even the younger generation. And to your point of like, I gave my son's 18th birthday, he got a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney were his gifts, and they will be gifts to my daughter when she turns 18. She knows it's coming. But I think if we change the way we thought about how we share those rights, because especially for the younger generation that most of their lives is online, we don't have usernames and passcodes for them. And it's so funny how many couples I talk to that it's like, okay, I get it. We did that. It's on my computer. Well, does your wife know your lock screen code? No. Well, she's not going to get to anything. And I've had that actually happen with parents. They can't get into the computer where they know all the kids' information is. So it's having those conversation early about if we all want to live better than our parents and we want to live great lives, we have to start planning and be more organized about our personal information today.
Yeah. Well, and even if you can access the computer, what the heck did they call it? Because no one wants to say passwords, because if someone got into their system, they would find all that stuff. So, I mean, it's very layered. It's very, very layered with all of this stuff, and it's got to be easily updated. I know I've got a list. I think it's 19 pages long now with, and I still don't have everything on it because I won't put my banking and stuff on there, but it's 19 pages worth of passwords and codes and, and then they're constantly changing. Either I forget and I have to go in and reset it, or they're telling me it's time to reset it, or it's not as secure as what the new recommendations are. And so, it's, and I don't like using the same passwords on everything. I know some people do, but I don't think that that's necessarily overly secure either, but that's a personal choice.
Right.
For me. I just, I can imagine how embraced this is on multiple levels. And to be honest, I would think kind of during and after COVID, people are going to appreciate the system even more, because so many people are going to be thrown in a crisis they never thought was going to hit. And anytime that happens to us, typically it makes us go inside and go, okay, what about my life now? How do we avoid these issues? And living smart and using the memory bank system, I think is a brilliant way to be able to do that. And plus we've got the time, a lot of people aren't working right now. So, we've all been, screaming life's too busy and we need more time to get important things done or enjoy life. And, now's the time, to look at some of those things and get organized with that. Have you seen a surge at all in your memory bank subscriptions and orders and things?
Yeah, so one of the, we've been getting more orders because people are getting ready, and it's interesting how many more people are going digital. So we've had a lot more orders, and I've been putting out, so I've been offering everyone during this time, I have a free white paper that I've always done. It's what to save and what to shred, and it has a checklist of all the information you need. And so I'm happy to offer that to all the listeners today. It's just at our website at memorybank.com/save. And it's a white paper they can download for free, and it gives them everything that they can need to organize. And I swear it all fits in a 2-inch binder. I've not had one client where we couldn't fit everything in a 2-inch binder if you just write down the information that you need. So It's a simple way to get organized, and it will make a huge difference in your own life. That was what surprised me personally. Was I was thinking I was doing this for mom and dad, and when I did it in my own household, I realized how easy it was for me to get my hands on information that I was, digging through the folders looking for, and now it sits right on my desk. So. Oh,
that's sweet. So can you get taxes down and not have all the receipts and just hold on to your binders?
Well, so that's a good question. So the binder's really a roadmap. So you're not going to put out, if people, I guess I will say that I have people that will digitize everything. So we can digitize the tax documents and you can shred all those things, and those are going to fit in the binder. But it could be, you might have a safe. So some people have jewelry or collections. So it will say, here's the safe combination and here's where it is, or here are my tax records. So you know where to go for all this information instead of looking in closets, in the attic, or wherever it may be.
Yeah, because I still have boxes of taxes with all my receipts and everything. And I'm like, do I really need all these receipts still after I've itemized everything? But then I'm thinking, well, if I get audited, I suppose I do with that. And I know you're not an accountant, but just...
But I mean, I run across that a lot. So I know that the majority of Americans don't need to keep their taxes past 3 years plus the current tax year, because that's the IRS laws, like they can't come after you. But if you have write-offs or whatever, then it's the 7-year number, even though we all have 7 years in our head. So if you ask your accountant, he's going to tell you, just keep it forever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not helpful. But I would just say, give it to someone to scan or buy a scanner. Everything's so inexpensive now. You could scan it, put it on a flash drive, and you have it should you need it, but I doubt you're ever going to need it again.
Yeah, my scanner is like hand by hand. My little rolly thing doesn't work well with it. But I'm trying to think of what those ones are called where it just zips through everything. You just put a pile of stuff through there.
Yep, I have it on my desk. It's right here. It's the Scan Snap. So they have different ones. There's a small one that's like under $200 that's portable. And then the top of the line is like $490. Okay. And it does like 20 or 30 pages. It does both sides. It's wireless, or you can plug it into your computer. It'll scan to your phone. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've thought about buying one, and procrastinator that I can be in certain things. I haven't done that, so I still have my boxes of stuff. Though I don't save as much as I used to with things, because I used to save all my utility and phone bills, and it's like if I just have, because you can always get that printed out from them if you
right.
need it, and it is kind of like duh, get that shredded and get the fireplace going or the fire pit outside.
Yes, exactly. That's my fireplace is I have a shredder, but I actually use the fireplace more often than my shredder.
Yeah. I like just bringing it outside. Tonight would be a good night with the full moon too, that we're supposed to be having this evening to do that. So we'll wonder. This has been great information. Anything that we haven't discussed that we should let others know about Memory Bank and what you're doing?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just unfortunately we're all inside, is take the time to have these conversations now, because for those of us who have been a caregiver and know it's a very difficult journey if you don't have some insight to someone's wishes. I was lucky to be able to have dinner with my parents pretty much twice a week for 20 years. So I had really good insights to what they know or do. But now, as I'm power of attorney for people that I haven't known for a lifetime, I do use things like 5 wishes. We'll have general conversations about someone else. So just take the time to have those conversations when it doesn't matter, because when it does, you're going to be happy you did have those conversations. So.
Yeah. Do you mind explaining to people, because a lot of people probably don't know what 5 wishes is?
Yes. So 5 Wishes it's a nonprofit organization, and they have it's a little toolkit where you can answer questions about how you would like to see the end of your life and what your healthcare wishes might be. And it's a little bit different than healthcare directives because it gives you specific examples, and it asks you, if you were here, what would you want? And so you give someone more context. I will say, my dad had Alzheimer's, and my dad ended up having a tumor on his tongue. And there, no healthcare directives, no 5 wishes could get that level of detail for me to go into. But because I had those conversations and he did have some of those tools in place, it gave me some things to give me context to what might be his, does he want quantity of life or does he want quality of life? So I could confidently answer that question for him. So it's good to have those kinds of tools in place. And it's 5wishes.org. Just do a Google search and you will be able to find it. And it's maybe $1 to download it, a donation to the nonprofit.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. And it's, you said, it's a great way just to have a conversation that, we need to have. Yeah. And it is important to have some context in terms of when you would want something and when you wouldn't. And that will alleviate a lot of grief and angst if you ever have to make those types of choices for someone else, because it's horrible when you haven't talked about it, when you don't know, when it is just a guess. And
right.
Not a fun place to be for anybody on that. Well, Kay, thank you so much for spending time with us today. You can go to her website, which is Memory Bank. And again, bank is BANC.com. And did you want to give people an email or a phone number at all? Or
Oh, sure. So if they have questions, feel free to write me and ask me your question. I'm always happy to help out. As someone who's lived this journey, I know it helps to find someone else that maybe just has some thoughts on it. My email is KAY at memorybank, MEMORYBANC.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. And I hope, I love your idea for your son who turned 18 in terms of you're getting a power of attorney and a healthcare directive, and, get people this information to think about. This is, a lot of times people are saying, oh, the millennials, they don't really care, but they really do. They see some of the mistakes that we've made as adults, and they don't want to do that. And so help them get organized, have that conversation, and maybe do it with them. Don't just say you need it, but
right.
This is something we all need. And we all just need to get more comfortable with our life cycle and our situations, and again, living smart.
Yeah, living well. It's a tool for living well.
Yeah, it's not about giving away your independence. It's really about keeping your independence and making sure that your wishes are held to, and that people understand who you really are, what you really want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, again, thank you, Kay. I appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you, Lori.
In closing, I just want to say thank you, and we look forward to our next program where we can bring sound information in these confusing times to people all around the world sharing this journey. Bye now.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now, this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.